reports growth rate slows down. The sick was not good. Speaking of the native ants, you won't believe what I spotted as I was checking up on them. The acrobat ants were busy in the asparagus ferns, tending to their ant cows. They had discovered the scale insects as a source of sweet honey to only the ghost, and were now protecting the scale insects aggressively. Other ants, like the dark horde, I watched as the acrobat ants rested protectively over the scale insects, which had grown so much now. Every now and then, the ants would cooperatively stroke the scale insect in hopes to get it to produce honey for them to eat. But it looked like this particular scale insect had been stroked dry. It needed more time to produce honey, but the acrobat ants were willing to wait. The Terror Raiders, our resident marauder ants, had just taken a bunch of male mantis body parts home to their nest earlier that day, so I was pretty sure they hadn't left during the open door crisis. I spotted a super ranger patrolling the moss. That was when I spotted these. There, look. Some mysterious orangey reddish ants were seen all over the moss floor. I had spotted them in a previous episode, but now their numbers were large enough for me to really notice them. What on earth were they? They kind of looked like fire ants, but a lot smaller. Strange that they suddenly began to appear out of nowhere, but I suspect that their queen was introduced into Pandora through the soils of one of the plants, and took several weeks to finally produce workers, which were now appearing all over the place. And my, were they busy. Anyone want to take a stab at what species they are? For now, let's call them nomads. They seem to be amicably sharing foraging territory with our Terror Raiders, which was cool. Happy to discover that the list of native ant species in our rainforest was still growing. But that wasn't all. To my surprise, another new species had joined Pandora's growing list of wildlife. I was shocked to discover this animal. A tiny frog had appeared out of nowhere. What species was this? Was it a house frog? It must have been introduced from the plants long ago, but I hadn't discovered it all this time until now. It was literally so tiny, about 2 centimeters long. I imagined it had been feeding on the tiniest of creatures, like ants, baby crickets, and flies. Happy to see this little frog hopping around the forest floor. And amazing to me that we were still discovering new species within our rainforest, a full vertebrate at that. The forest floor seemed to be just teeming with life. Feeding from a large pile of tree frog poop was a group of mites. I loved seeing the soil creatures of Pandora doing their thing, helping to break down waste into usable fertilizer for all the plants and mosses. It always blew my mind how in nature, it seems one animal's byproduct and waste is some other creature's food. Check out this tree frog dropping, which was still kind of shaped like a cricket that the acrobat ants were managing to find edible bits from. In nature, nothing goes to waste, and I was pleased to see evidence of this cycling of nutrients and food in Pandora. I knew the soil creatures were effective fertilizer producers, because the plants of the forest were flourishing now, more than ever, especially the asparagus ferns, who were non-stop sending out new shoots. Asparagus ferns were moving from shoots high up in the canopy now, and pressing up against the fern plants. These ferns were a vital source of food for the herbivores, like the grasshoppers, who have now reached full maturity. It was amazing to me that we watched these grasshoppers grow up in the rainforest from just tiny little nymphs. Of course, close relatives of the grasshoppers, the black forest crickets, now abundant in the lands. with a constant self-renewing population, were also prolific herbivores, mostly controlling the moss growth. The adult crickets were always either eating corn, mating, or laying eggs. But the apex herbivore of the lands lay quietly under the lemon-lime philodendron. Stanley, our resident bush cricket, was asleep, waiting for nighttime, when he would emerge to begin his spree of plant destruction. No other herbivore in the lands has been as destructive to the plants and vines as he. He was pretty thorough at munching on the loose cheeks of the asparagus birds